Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Ask an Event Pro, the show where we bring you closer to the masterminds behind the events that you love. This is your host, Francisco. I'm a product evangelist at Events.com. With us today, we've got Lee Corrigan. He's the president of Corrigan Sports. They're event organizers of events such as the Baltimore 10 Miler, the Baltimore Marathon, the Oakland Running Festival, just to name a few. And today's topic, we'll be talking about marketing more than just social media. Lee, welcome and good morning.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure, Lee. So, Lee, we'll get started with a bit of a fun question for you, not necessarily related to marketing. We would love to know, what are 5 essentials that you keep in your bag on race or event day?
Sure. I think it's important to have the following in your briefcase, and people make fun of me a little bit because I carry around a satchel on my shoulder basically the entire day. And in there, of course, are the permits for us to be on the city streets and, of course, through the city parks when we're putting on these events. That's always important, number one. Number two, your insurance papers. You never want to leave those behind just in case. Then I always load up my briefcase with VIP passes, all access passes, course passes. It's very, very important because you're constantly running into some political figure or some media person, and you want to make sure that they have access into on the course and into the VIP areas. That's all the announcer scripts, because you never know, one of these announcers doesn't show up and somebody's got to jump up there and make sure that you have those handy. So those are the essentials for me.
Absolutely. More on the document side, just be safe, make sure you have your permits, make sure that you have your scripts. That's great, Lee. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Lee, in today's show, we do want to talk a little bit about marketing, how it's more than just social media. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the channels and tools that you use to get the word around, to get the word out about your events?
Sure. Well, we use a multifaceted effort when it comes to marketing, advertising, and promoting our events. First of all, you still have the traditional media. Our organization has been very successful in creating media partnerships with television stations and radio stations, so that's important too. But when it comes to attracting runners themselves, I think it's very important that you go after specific running publications, running websites, and then, of course, nothing is more valuable than the grassroots stuff. And when I talk about grassroots, I'm talking about having a booth at other events that are close to your hometown. So, for instance, when we're promoting the Baltimore Marathon and Running Festival, we'll go to Philadelphia, and we'll go to Washington, D.C., and we'll go to Richmond, and we'll go to Delaware to promote our Baltimore event. So that's something that's very valuable. And then I think the other part of the grassroots effort is getting out there and making sure that you're in contact with all the various running groups in your community, as well as also all the running stores. And one of the things that we talk about here is that everybody has kind of started relying on email blasts, email blasts, email blasts, email blasts. Well, I got news for people. Email blasts are now junk mail. And so we've actually gone back to the junk mail. And so now we're actually making an effort to actually send direct mail pieces out, as well as all the other different venues and avenues. Social media, of course, is getting more and more prevalent, and we're getting better and better at that. But I kind of believe in yinging while everybody else is yanging. So those email blasts become white noise, I'm afraid. And so I want to do something a little bit different to catch their attention, and maybe that involves getting in the Wayback Machine and doing it the old way.
I couldn't agree more with you, Lee. I'm right there with you. I get tons of those blast emails, and you just kind of recognize them now, right? And just, if they don't go directly to your junk mail, you're going to delete them before you even open them. So that's great to hear that you're going back to basics, if you will. That's great. That's great. Now, one of the most talked about campaigns in your area this year was the Baltimore Pride. Talk to us about your Baltimore Pride campaign, and how did you incorporate marketing and PR to this campaign?
Sure. In addition to what we normally do for our marketing, advertising, and promotion of the Baltimore Marathon. We felt it to be especially appropriate this year with all the civil unrest here in Baltimore, and we experienced the riots, of course, in April. And one of the things we learned after looking at our numbers, and one of the things that Whitney Snoops on my team, who's in charge of the database, and looking at those figures all the time, she would bring them up to me, and we'd be down 15%, 20%, 22%, and at a certain point we're like, uh-oh, this civil unrest is really affecting us negatively. So then we dug deeper into those numbers, and what we found out is that people from out of town were not coming. So typically we get about 40% of our runners and participants in Baltimore are from out of the state of Maryland. And so what our research told us when we examined that database is that actually about 30%, only about 30% of our runners were coming from out of town. So I felt like, well, you know what? There's probably not much that we can do to sway those people to come to Baltimore. But I do know what we can do, and that is we can sway all the people in the Baltimore-Washington corridor that care about our great city, right, to choose Baltimore this year. As we all know, there's a lot of fall events to choose from. You can choose a Marine Corps Marathon. You can choose Richmond. You can choose New York. You can choose Philadelphia. Well, we asked all the people here in the Baltimore-Washington area to show your Baltimore pride, run, cheer, or volunteer at this year's Baltimore Marathon, and show your Baltimore pride. And one of the things that we did, this became not just a marketing effort, but a public relations effort, and then we tied it into some local charities. And we created a T-shirt here, and you can see the logo, the Baltimore Pride logo. That's the state of Maryland flag, of course. It was very, very popular. And then on the back we have Believe, Be Strong, and Be More at the Baltimore Marathon. And so what we did is we created this shirt, and we made it a fundraiser. And we decided that we were going to support the Baltimore Police Department and some of their efforts, and they have an organization called Signal 13 Foundation, which means officer down in need of assistance immediately from his fellow officers. So we took the net proceeds and gave half of it to the Signal 13 Foundation, and then we gave the other half to the mayor's initiative. It's called Youth Works here in Baltimore, and what her initiative is to try to get underprivileged youth meaningful jobs. And so we kind of had a foot in each camp, if you will, but we were supporting both the police and the local community through this T-shirt, which was great, and we sold over 1,000 of them. So we were able to raise quite a bit of money for both those organizations and really give that Baltimore Pride campaign a little bit more of a story, a little bit more meat for the media to sink their teeth into, and it worked. We got an incredible amount of attention from television stations and newspapers, and great stories about it, and they all wanted to see the T-shirt. And my public relations director, of course, sent one of these T-shirts out to just about every media personality in the city, whether it be print, TV, radio, whatever. So everybody was aware of this campaign and what we were going through. So the bottom line is we were able to beat up our deficit from about 22%. We were down about 3 months out from the event to about 6%. So we felt like that was well worth the effort, and certainly helped tell the story of our great city and the great pride that Baltimoreans have.
Absolutely, Lee. That was very smart. Congratulations on that. Love the campaign, and it's a great example of taking a situation that is maybe a little bit negative, maybe a little bit on the bad side of people's minds, and then spinning it into something very positive that can unite people, unite the town. That's great.
That was exactly what we were after.
Should we expect to see the Baltimore Pride stick around a couple more years at least?
Yeah, we're gonna keep going with it, and it was met with such positive reaction, and a lot of the community leaders really thought it was great. We heard a lot of positive about it, so we're gonna go ahead and keep that rolling.
Awesome.
We're gonna ride that horse for a while.
Awesome. Now, Lee, something that maybe some of our audience can see in the background, Corrigan Sports is involved with lacrosse as well as endurance events, putting on some of the biggest tournaments out there, things like that. So I'm actually going to change my next question a little bit. I wanted to ask you what the marketing approach, or how the marketing approach is different between putting on a smaller race, say a 5K, versus a marathon. But now I'm very interested in learning how it's different from a marathon and a lacrosse event, if it is different.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you what really happened is part of it is just personal affinity of myself and my crew here at Corrigan Sports Enterprises. We have a crew of about 25 people, and our company slogan is "Events from Conception to Fruition," which is a fancy way of saying we do everything from start to finish. We dream up the event, we do the public relations, we do the marketing, we do the advertising, we do all the operations and logistics. And so we built our company in the endurance space on that foundation. And then what happened is we got involved with lacrosse, number one, because a bunch of us are former lacrosse players and we truly enjoy it. And what happened is we created the Under Armour All-American, which is an awesome event. If you've heard of the McDonald's All-American basketball game, well, lacrosse is the Under Armour All-American Lacrosse Classic is the lacrosse version of that. So that was a big step. And then something else happened, and that is that through the process of coaching my son and coaching locally here, and the advent of all these club lacrosse teams, what we discovered, or what I discovered, is going to all these lacrosse events, they were really being run by former lacrosse coaches, former college lacrosse coaches and high school coaches, and they were running it out of their basement or running it out of the trunk of their car. And I said, and I went to a lot of unorganized, shall we call them, lacrosse tournaments, and they were unorganized, they're poorly promoted on the whole. And so what I did is I thought to myself, well, we got the staff and we certainly have the stuff to put on a great event, whether it's a running event or whether it's a lacrosse tournament or even a field hockey tournament, which we're also into now. And lo and behold, so we come out of the blocks and we start putting on these lacrosse tournaments, and now you got Corrigan Sports Enterprises, 20 to 25 full-time employees on site. And what that means is that everybody, all these college coaches and club coaches that are coming to this event, and all the moms and dads and the players, they're talking to somebody that's been thinking about running that event for the last 6 months, as opposed to many of our competitors just hire on $10 an hour. They're just people that are hired for the weekend, and they don't know anything. They really don't know anything. And so it really shot us immediately to the head of the class in the lacrosse tournament space. And so that's kind of how that kind of evolved, and that's also why we're very good at it, and we get a lot of compliments, and most people that come to our events will tell you that we're certainly one of the best. So that's how that came about, and it's going wonderful. It's going terrific, and lacrosse is a growing sport, and a lot of it goes hand in hand with the running too. So we're very happy about it.
That's greatly. That's really awesome. Now, it sounds to me like you're a person that's always looking for that opportunity. It's always, doing research and investigating where the next opportunity is. So I have to assume that you're a person that looks a lot at data and statistics.
Yeah.
So I would love to understand how you measure marketing success.
Mm-hmm. Well, once again, talking about my database manager, poor Whitney, and certainly the first way that you can measure it is by the number of runners that you get year after year after year. And fortunately for us, knock on wood, we've had a long history of increasing the size of our fields for just about every single one of our events. Very rarely do we go backwards, and for the most part, we've enjoyed an increase of runners in every single one of our events, usually in the 5 to 15% range annually, and that's something that's really important. So that's the first measurement. That's very easy, obviously, looking at that. Then, of course, you want to read the tea leaves a little bit, and you break down the demographics. Where are the people coming from? What's working? What's not working in terms of your messaging that you can really see by looking at your marketing plan and then looking at the demographics of the people who are actually signing up and attending. Then the other thing I would say, which is really, really critical, is the buzz that you create in the community, in that running community, in that lacrosse community, whatever it may be. Are people talking about it? Are people out there? And then additionally, of course, the media, the local media, and that Baltimore Pride campaign was a perfect example of things that really, really worked. And you know, so and yeah, and then of course you're constantly reading the tea leaves, and a lot of it is guesswork. Of course, I wish there was a special formula we could all follow and make sure that we all grew 10, 12% every year, but it's just not going to happen. So you just got to keep plugging along and trust your instincts.
Got it. Absolutely. Now, Lee, you can do all the marketing, all the planning, the PR, come up with the great campaigns. But as you and I both know, a lot of times there are mistakes and problems that arise on race day that you just can't plan for.
Sure.
So I'd love to hear from your expert advice. What is the biggest mistake that can happen on race day for some of our audience?
Well, first of all, what I'd say is there's no such thing as a perfect event. It's impossible to have 100% happiness all the way across the board. One of the things that we do every year is, in every single event that we do, we send out a post-race survey, and at the last question is always, would you highly recommend our event to a friend? And over the years, we have scored very, very highly. I think our worst rating ever is 92%. We're usually in the 95%. In Oakland, we've been fortunate enough to be up in the 97 percentile in terms of people highly recommending our event to a friend. So that's something. You really need to listen to that. But the other part of it is you're probably going to be your worst critic, because as the person that runs the event and is prepared or involved in all the preparations of that event, you know where what's under the skirt, so to speak, and you know where you missed on game day or you didn't miss. So in terms of the biggest mistake that you can make is being prepared. And that's the first thing. And you always want to be so prepared, and I'll just use the medical as an example. You want your medical team and your process to be so good that if something bad does happen, you know, the first thing they say, well, were people there? Yes. Did they have a plan? Yes. Did we have the proper coverage? Yes. And if you can answer to all those things, there's not a whole lot you could have ever done anyway to prevent that person from getting hurt or having a medical incident of some kind. So I think being prepared is critical. The second thing is don't panic. Don't panic, and there are people there to help you, and make sure your level of communication is strong with the local authorities, all the city service folks that you have to deal with, whether it's the police department, the fire department, the medical team, or the people from transportation and public works. Because if you are doing a great job communicating with those people, then everything will run smoothly, and those people will help you indeed. So those are kind of the things that I would say that you want to try to make sure that you're doing on game day, and a lot of that has to do with your preparation up to game day, really. And you know, in terms of mistakes, you know, just not being prepared. That's the biggest mistake that you can make. You want to cross all your T's and dot all your I's before leading up and have great level of communication.
Well, that's fantastic. There you have it, folks. Just be prepared on race day. Make sure that you are paying attention to all the details. We have been speaking with Lee Corrigan. He's the president of Corrigan Sports Enterprises. They are the event organizers that are behind some of the biggest running events in the nation, and now also taking the lacrosse sport by storm. Lee, I want to thank you on behalf of Asking Event Pro and Events.com for your time. It has been a pleasure. Hopefully we have you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Looking forward to having you again in the near future.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Lee. Have happy holidays.
You too.